We are so honored to be joined by Hattie Hill and Carrie Freeman Parsons, who will be discussing the power of business and having the power to make a difference in the human condition of the cities they live and work in. Hattie serves as the president and CEO of the TD Jakes Foundation now, which provides the skills, education, and training to lift communities, increase diversity and inclusion, and gender equity, and power the modern global economy through science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics, and jobs. Carrie is the third generation of her family to be actively involved in Freeman, a live event and brand experience company that was founded in 1927. In addition to her work with Freeman, she's on the board here at Conscious Capitalism, Inc., and is involved with Girls Inc. of Metropolitan Dallas and the Texas Women's Foundation. Hattie and Carrie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share your wisdom with the community today.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a fun opportunity. Hattie and I go way back, so it's fun for us to be able to engage in this conversation. And Hattie, given the fact that we're going to be talking about how business can impact community as a stakeholder, I want to start first with defining community so that we're all starting from the same page. So can you share with me how you're defining it and how you're thinking about it?
Sure. So first of all, it's always great to be with you. So thank you so much for this time today. And thanks, of course, to Alexander and his team for having us, because this is lots of fun. So when I'm thinking about community, your community, I think we used to think about it as the smaller area that we sort of live and play in. But now we have to really think about community as a broader, who are the people, because a healthy company can't be healthy without a healthy community. So it's every community, not just my close community that's within my neighborhood. That's how we think about it. So it's all the stakeholders, it's elected officials, it's faith-based leaders, it's corporations, it's just all kind of community leaders, advocates. It really is everyone coming to the table and being a part of this process.
I agree with you. And I think what's interesting to me is the way that, in my view, the way businesses saw their responsibility as it related to their communities was really through philanthropy, right? It was, our company is going to give a certain amount of money every year to this nonprofit, or we're going to participate in this fundraiser, or we're going to donate some of our services, on a complimentary basis to help. But to me, I really started to see the evolution of how companies are thinking about the community as a stakeholder. And I'd like to get your point of view on that, if that's something that you're seeing and you're experiencing as well.
Absolutely. What happened with COVID, I think it just exposed to all of our companies that we needed to do more. Because first and foremost, I absolutely believe, just like with your company, Carrie, with the corporations here that I work very closely with, not only just in Dallas, but across the country, is that you have some really good people who are doing really good things. But we have often taken our social responsibility or our nonprofit efforts and pushed those out. And so when you see that didn't actually work as well as we thought, because that's what COVID showed us, then it just requires it requires us to double our efforts. And so that's what we're seeing now.
So can you give me, so I know you've been on the front lines of some of this, and I think the audience is really going to enjoy hearing about what's been going on, what happened this summer, specifically with TD Jakes and how you've been engaging. But, why don't you expand on that a little bit? How are you seeing this COVID crisis really tapping into the consciousness of leaders and how they're responding?
So first, let me start with my organization. So my boss, TD Jakes, who is a faith leader, entrepreneur, he's an entertainment, he makes movies, and he's involved in lots of things. But in January, he asked me to partner with him to launch a foundation that really focused on getting women, our poor communities engaged with science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So we launched this in January. We launched in New York with not only Dallas, but with the Brooklyn STEAM Center. Just really excited about the opportunity to learn. And really, that's what I was going to spend the first 6 months doing as president and CEO. So then, the COVID happened in March, and we immediately had to stop. And that's what I think a lot of businesses had to do, and really pivot and think about where can we most help. So collaboration was a big one. We partnered with the chamber to help with jobs website for resources for jobs, small businesses, people trying to complete their PPE forms. So we really tried to take be an immediate resource for the community. And then the second piece was the students, because as you look at the statistics, especially for our poorer students in more disadvantaged neighborhoods, they tend to fall further behind. So as the schools shut down, we turned to how do we help the students move forward. And so we had through the church, a summer STEAM academy. And we decided to take that online, put it under the foundation, which is a separate 501c3, and then turn that entire thing into virtual. So what we expected, 350 to 500, we ended up with 5,000 students, 23 countries. I mean, it was so much more than we had anticipated, but it also opened our eyes to a lot of the inequities in our community and what we needed to do to help with that. So we partnered with a lot of great companies, AT&T, the Mavericks, we had lots of access organizations, Jacobs Engineering, which was awesome to have that kind of support, because at that point, businesses truly had to be a force for good and put all hands on deck.
And have you seen, as COVID has gone on, have you seen these companies kind of retrenching at all? Like, wow, we can no longer afford to do this? Or what are you seeing with those kind of industry leaders? Are they doubling down or?
It's been interesting, because I actually thought that you would start to see people pull back. I mean, we're part of an industry, in the meetings industry, where we know that industry has been hit so hard. But what I have not seen is the companies pulling back on their commitments. So if you go back to the murder of George Floyd and the social justice movement, and I was looking up some numbers because I wanted to share this with the audience today. We are up to $30 billion committed to social and racial justice by corporations. So it is a conscious decision. And our incoming chair of the Dallas Chamber from EY, Michelle Volpe, said this to me the other day, and it's so important. She said, we can't afford not to honor our commitments, because the employees will hold us accountable. It doesn't go away just because everything sort of dies down. So I don't think the companies are going to retrench, because their basic integrity is now focused on what they've said. So I don't think there's going back. Mm-hmm. Although I'd love to hear what you think.
No, I hope so. And I agree. And I think that the reason why I think there's going to continue to be an investment, one, I do think that there's integrity, but I also think that the clarity of the inequities and what that means to our society going forward. And I think, to your point, when you were thinking about a healthy company has to live in a healthy community, I know that this is something that I remember Mayor Rawlings, however many years ago, who was mayor of Dallas at the time, who the way our structure, the mayor doesn't necessarily have, isn't responsible for the independent school district, but I recall him specifically saying, we are not going to be able to recruit corporations into Dallas proper if we do not have a strong school system, because their employees want to work where kids go to school, and that's why they were all heading out to the suburbs and things like that. So it seems what I've seen as a resident of Dallas is that, to your point, DISD and city government and businesses, et cetera, are all realizing that there's a common interest that needs to be moved forward, and to the degree that we do that together, as opposed to trying to do that independently, is finally, making a big difference. And how else, I know you're really involved with the chamber. So what else is the chamber doing kind of around this to help businesses that want to do their part or get involved?
So what the chamber did, which was very special, immediately in the post-George Floyd world, we came together, and the chair, John Alajade, who's with Access, the CEO, and Dave Petrosky, who is the CEO of the chamber, did a great job of just pulling us all together as a board and saying, we need to think about this, and not just think about it as a moment in time, but a sustainable way that we can have an impact. And so we came together as a board. Then the chamber actually created, as a part of the board governance, a new council of the board of directors. So when you're putting initiatives in, you want to make them sustainable. So for something to be sustainable, it had to be a part of the governance of the organization, because you go from that governance to being a council to being a resource within the organization. So we just walked a best practice process through. So it's a part of going forward. We now have a diversity, equity, and inclusion council that reports into the full board. It is chaired by the current chair and the incoming chair. We took that and attached it to our 3-year strategy for the organization. And then most importantly, and in a COVID world where nonprofits are cutting back, we added 2 new resources: a senior vice president of DEI for the chamber, and then we also added a senior VP of community engagement, because again, this is all about community, and we need someone focusing on that all the time. And specifically for Dallas, we're looking at the southern sector of the city. How do we really hone in on our most needed citizens and make them a part of this process? So far, so good. We're all still committed. We're excited. John Alajade, who is the current chair, forced us all to think about how we could be a force for good. And this is really is a real guiding post for us on a day-to-day basis as we talk about these issues.
Well, and what is so beautiful about this is it's so completely aligned with conscious capitalism, right? That we've said all along that business should be a force for good. That is, we can elevate humanity by creating jobs and opportunities and all these other types of things. And so what this is really doing is kind of adding to that dimension of not just elevating humanity through your own business in the work, but how your business is integrating into the community and leveraging your resources and your time and your talent and that type of thing going forward. So my next question, Hattie, is really around how have you seen businesses do that? So again, it's not just about writing a check, right? It's not just about underwriting a grant. But as you've been going through this in your work with AT&T and seeing the work with the chamber, and what are some ways that you've seen businesses really stepping up in a way that perhaps you haven't seen them in the past?
Yeah, especially all the companies that we've partnered with, they bring us 3 things: time, talent, and treasure. Treasure is what we've always focused on. We write a check and it's resolved. Well, we also know now that didn't just work. So we look into the talent of the organization. For example, with our summer STEAM Academy, we had from the DART, Parkland Hospital, UT Southwestern, we had them giving us video. We were showing our young people, and we had ages from 5 to 16 in this STEAM camp. And so we had the companies showing how they operate, because we're also trying to inspire a younger generation. So even in COVID, the companies were able to work with their employees to get us video, which was great, to give us virtual tours, to really help us to build this story in a way that young people can see their future. My favorite part of the entire academy was the closing. We partnered with the Dallas Symphony, and they literally created a song with the young people in their homes, partnered with the leaders at the symphony and some of the artists. And I mean, it was fantastic. And I would have never thought that was even possible.
Yeah.
So it's not just saying, let me write a check, but it is bring us your time, your talent, and your treasure. I mean, my boss is in 100 million homes around this country. He is a huge brand. So we can get to people and some of the most needed communities because he's trusted by those communities. But the opportunity is for us to all be more collaborative than we've ever been before.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that and you're speaking to also how nonprofits are having to think differently, right? They're having to not just be missionally driven, but also think like a CEO and think about how are you going to thrive and survive. And I think one of the aspects that certainly y'all were able to address this summer is there are a lot of nonprofits, for instance, that are focusing on STEAM education for kids, right? And they're all serving different niches and different communities and that type of thing, which is all good, except for they're not necessarily all rowing together, and they're not all leveraging the same resources. And so I think that's the other piece of it, is how can business leaders help nonprofits who have the same mission, but aren't going about it either the same way or in a collaborative way, and how do you kind of create that space for them to do so?
Exactly. I think what COVID has really taught everyone is that we have to be collaborative. We have to work together. You don't have to reinvent. It's for example, and you and I both serve on the board of the Texas Women's Foundation, and we talk with Roz, our CEO. I talk to her all the time about getting to the most needed communities, and how do we collaborate to help her do that? Because if you're not getting, if I have the people on my side, which we have a totally direct link to the most needed communities, but you're a corporation or a nonprofit who wants to help, we have to serve as a bridge in the middle of that to help you get there. And that's what we've been spending a lot of our time making sure that collaboration is there. When we collaborated with the Chamber on their job placement program, we had a large number of people who came directly to us for jobs that would have never even known to go to the Dallas Chamber. And so that's what all of that collaboration means and is to your city. It'll help your community be stronger at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. We were involved in a project, as Alexander mentioned. I've been supporting and involved with Girls Inc. for a long time, Metropolitan Dallas, and we wanted to engage with them on the revamping of their campus, one of their buildings, because it just didn't look like a place that little girls would be inspired to learn. And that's what we do. We're experienced designers. And so I remember in my first conversations with Beth Myers, who's a brilliant CEO, but I kept talking to her about, the possibilities. And I remember her initial response was, she's used to working from a place of scarcity, mm-hmm. right? Like we don't have the resources. We don't have that, but we do. We have those resources. And also that kind of, how many times, she said, I got to tell you how many times companies have come to us and said, we want to help. And they've had all this intention, and then they've gone about their day jobs and they've kind of left us high and dry. So, Aaron asked a question around, writing the check isn't the way to cut it, especially in DEI efforts. And so, what are the actionable ways that companies can truly demonstrate that they're committed to efforts to tackle equity for all?
I think what companies can do, resources are always important, and I think that's great. But it's also because very often, and we saw this in George Floyd, where you had a lot of CEOs who said, I didn't even get it. I didn't even know this existed. I didn't know my Black employees were going through this. So a part of that is truly education. You have to be willing to educate from the middle or wherever you are in your company, help to educate your leaders on some of these issues, because they're really big issues that I talked to a number of CEOs who were like, did your family experience this, Hattie? Was this real? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's real. And so I think that it's given the money, but also we, as part of conscious capitalism, we're about conscious leadership. So as a CEO, especially if you're not a conscious leader, then what do I need to be informed? I think that's going to be really critical going forward, because these things aren't going to end no matter anytime soon. I just don't think so. This is the first time in all the generations. My mom is 84. So I was asking her what she thought. And she said, oh, this is the first time we've seen so many people across all races, across all generations, really thinking about this. So I think we have to be prepared as we all come to the table. If there's something I don't know, I want you to help me. If there's something you don't know, I want to help. And if we do that, we will truly build a better community for all. And that's our goal. A healthy community, healthy business. Unhealthy community, unhealthy business.
I agree with you. And it's interesting. I mean, I think, frankly, one of the blessings of COVID, I know for myself personally, is, I mean, the negative is we haven't had a lot of work to produce because we're in the live experience business.
Right.
But I haven't been jumping on planes, and I haven't been going to, whatever, and this dinner and that dinner and this meeting and that meeting, and I've had more time, right? I had a little bit more time to really think about and to sit with some of what was happening, especially this summer, and et cetera. And my daughter, a 20-year-old sociology major, of course, she has lots of opinions and lots of things to say on the matter, which is awesome.
That's right.
And I do think that once the awakening, if you allow yourself the awakening, once you are awake, you just can't go back. I mean, you just can't reconcile that it's okay and that you shouldn't do anything about it. So I think continuing to share those narratives and that kind of thing. So let's see, Abigail has a question. Well, let me go back to Marianne. Is there a certification organizations can take? I'm going to defer that to the CCI staff to let you know, and you can obviously go to the Conscious Capitalism website, and there's a lot of resources and things there. So I'm going to pitch that question to them. And Abigail's asking, if you're a growing brand with a similar mission, how do you entice established organizations to partner with you and your mission? That's an interesting question, right? So, and I don't know if you're talking about I'm presuming not as a nonprofit, but as a business. How do you invite people to collaborate with you?
I think it's what I would say, if you're starting new and you don't have a lot of visibility around your brand, then collaboration is so important. And whether you're in a for-profit or non-for-profit, look around. Who could you partner with? Who could you work with? Because the independent, I can do it all myself philosophy, just going to help us right now. We need all hands on deck just to help. I mean, I spent a lot of time around the food industry, and I know how the food, events industry, all these industries, hotels, we've all been around for 30 years. And so it's do what you can, but also know that you can partner with other people, and maybe you're able to support them. For example, someone that really supplies to restaurants has been helping with leverage their brand and helping with the grocery stores. So it's looking for other ways that you can partner to get your brand out there. And sometimes in this world, it might be in this post-COVID world, it could be collaboration.
Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that if you're helping them to solve a business problem, like what's in it for them? And what's in it for them, maybe they're resource deprived or constrained, or they don't have access to a specific market that you have, or they have challenges that they want to attain that they can't do on their own, and how can you help them? It's interesting. We work with a lot of associations to create their conventions, trade shows, events, and that kind of thing. And it's interesting that there should be some consolidation on events and that type of thing. And typically what happens is it immediately gets into like, oh, well, then we only need one staff and my person's better than your person. And I like the way we do it better than the way you do it. And like, you never get to the opportunity to do it because you've immediately dismissed the how, as opposed to really getting focused on the why and making a commitment there. Once you have a commitment on the why, then you can start making decisions on the how. Otherwise you're going to get tripped up. So Eric is asking, Hattie, it is sort of new still with the George Floyd and some of that has happened this summer. And so, what is your sense that the companies that have been responding, and you mentioned the huge commitments that have been made, financial commitments to this work on diversity and inclusion, and are you seeing them walk the walk, or are you seeing mostly talk the talk, or can you tell pretty early on? Are you able to distinguish when they come to the table, like if, they're just saying what they think they're supposed to say, or, but that you're, in fact, you can really tell that there's a difference, that they're really trying to get in to support
I
it?
think the companies are totally sincere in what they want to do. Where they need help often, and we heard this from many of our companies here in Dallas, is here's what we've been doing, and maybe that didn't work as well as we thought. So it's actually coming up with new strategies that's going to help move the issues forward. I don't think they're walking away from it. I just think they're really trying to get clarity as they work on 2021 budgets, and in this COVID world and all of that, it's still saying this is important to us, it's important to our people. It's probably more important, to believe it or not, for companies to be visible right now than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And so they want to show that. So I would look at not only the resources within your organization, because that's the other thing. Very often in companies, DEI efforts are at low levels. And so you really want to elevate that. That is a practice, just like finance, just like HR. So you don't want to just give somebody that job. That is a practice that has best practices to it. It needs to be results driven, connected to your strategy. So I think once companies get those pieces in place, then it'll continue to help them move forward.
I think you've touched on a really important topic, because I think, first and foremost, it really does have to start with the commitment of leadership, right? Because leadership owns the budget, they own the resources, they own risk, they own all of these other things. So, it really has to start first with the CEO commitment. And it's similar to environmental issues and some of these other things. Like, are we actually going to weave that lens into every decision we make? And
Right.
then in addition to that, I think, Hattie, for people who say, well, my company isn't doing what I think they could, like, I think we could be doing this, or I think we should be doing that. If someone is a mid-level manager or kind of mid in the organization, how could they kind of position themselves to get this elevated to the senior level? I think, and basically what I'm like, how do you lead from where you sit, as opposed, lead from where you are, as opposed to saying, well, until my CEO does this or whatever, we can't do anything.
Yeah, see, I don't think that people want to wait on their CEO. I mean, if you look at the energy from the young people across the country and across the world, it is really a lot of people leading from the middle. So what you want to do is to have a balanced, I would say, a balanced approach, but find allies. Who are the people that are interested in the same things you're interested in? You don't have to be a woman to be interested in women's issues. You don't have to be a person of color to be able to support people of color. So you want to be an ally in all of these areas to see how you can support, what you can do And then I always tell people to educate themselves, because if you can bring me knowledge from whatever level you are in your company, that's going to make me happy. So what is the, what can you give me information? Say, well, you know, here's an article that I read, or here's something that I've attended, or I know there were several books that were flying around and people were calling going, should I read this, Hattie? Is that going to help me understand about, you know, white privilege? I mean, so education is huge, and you can in a very nice way email something to someone and just say, just thought you'd want to know about this. Someone sent me something here in Dallas about a single mom of 3 children who lived in the southern sector, and would take the bus every morning at 4 to get out to the north to her job. It was just one of those stories that really exemplifies what we're talking about, making our communities more healthy and helping people. And so I didn't have to give a speech to all of our CEOs. I just shared, here's what we're trying to help. And so looking articles, talking to the various people, right now we need to do a lot of listening. Right. And just what is the concern? Because you'll never necessarily, Carrie, I don't think we get people to always agree, but at least I appreciate your opinion, and I want to listen to your opinion, and then I can share my opinion, and maybe we meet someplace in the middle. But I think for every employee, if I'm from the first level in the company all the way up to your senior team, see where you can have an impact by listening and educating is what I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think as a leader, you know, one of the hardest challenges is balancing priorities, right? And again, even pre-COVID, I mean, it's not like everybody was flush with more resources than they knew what to do with. And so, you know, finding people who are willing to step in and support and say, I got this, coach, you know, give me the ball, I'm in, I'm going to go make it happen. This is my plan. This is how I'm going to support you. This is whatever, you know, you're really helping your company do good things, and you're helping your CEO be successful and your manager be successful, which is important to them, regardless of whether or not they're conscious leaders or not. You know, you want to make sure that you're doing the things in your business and as a CEO that are positioning your company well. So I think, you know, leveraging the seat that you're in to move forward. I had the opportunity, and Hattie, as you mentioned, we're on the Texas Women's Foundation together, and at Project Unity and Together We Can. So for the people on this, I can put it into the chat, but Project Unity, and then Together We Can .one, ONE. And I don't need to spend a lot of time going into all of it, but it was faith-based leaders who initially came together after we had police shootings here in Dallas a few years ago. And they said, you know, that we've got to do something to support our community. And now they have this program that we did with the Texas Women's Foundation, where they basically said, we're supposed to have a meal together, but we can't do that. But just this opportunity to ask questions from the different points of view from how people were raised, right? And so, you know, how my reaction to George Floyd perhaps maybe somewhat different than your reaction to George Floyd, because I look at it and say, like, I can't believe this is happening. And you might say, I can't believe this is happening again, right? But you have these discussions that really enable you to have, to go into territory that might have felt uncomfortable before, but in a way that's very healthy. And, you know, that's been helpful for me.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think that, you know, what if there's a gift of COVID, the fact that we were all sort of inside, so we could focus on these things, the fact that we can have these open conversations with not only just CEOs, but everyone, the fact that we actually walked away from that going, wait, we're not a healthy community, and we need to figure out a way to get healthy. And you know, I love those Project Unity conversations, because I'm happy to participate, because you also have to bring your own understanding, because only I know how I was raised and what I've seen. I have 15 nephews and great nephews. I get all of that because we've had those conversations, and they've been driving my Mercedes in my neighborhood and been stopped. So I've gone through all of that, right? But you had the conversation about them coming home alive. That's the real conversation. And so the fact that reality now sits with everyone, and that means we all owe that reality a solution. And that's what I think that conscious leadership is about. We see problems, we bring solutions. It makes our community more healthy, makes our company more healthy, and people, we want companies to move to Dallas and know they're coming into a healthy community. And to do that, we have to put the effort in. And that's why I've been so excited to participate with the chamber work, because it really is making us have a healthy community.
So Bill asked a question specifically related to that. Like, how does one measure community health? So, I mean, I'm sure that there's no, like, you're not going to know it when you get, it's incremental improvement, right? But what are the primary measures that the chamber is saying that when these things are working well, then that would mean that our community is healthy or is becoming healthier?
So our strategy for the chamber had 4 pillars. One was diversity in leadership. And that is that when we look at not only our elected officials, but boards of companies, nonprofits, that we have diverse voices at the table. Because a big reason that the George Floyd piece was such a shock is because people didn't know people where that had happened. So that diversity in leadership, so that you have those voices there to help understand more of what's happening in your community. And all of these pillars are being led by CEOs from the various companies. And so that one is huge. Education in the workforce. And you hit on it when we attack the issue with the school systems. We also realize now we've got to continue that emphasis, but also making sure, because of COVID, a lot of young people may not go to college, who had planned to go to college. Getting more companies to make sure they have the talent that's ready, whether it's in trade programs. So how do we make sure companies, we were talking to someone the other day and they have like 1,000 positions open. And I know there's people who are looking for jobs. So how do we make sure those 2 things connect? So the workforce, and then community investment in underserved areas. So that's the one that I'm a part of. And it's really looking at our poorest communities and saying, when we are successful, what does that look like? So to his point, there's a measurement that goes with each one of these. And then the last pillar is policing and criminal justice policies. And we know that's a huge issue in our community. So what we've done is again, we've attached it to our strategy. So the actual strategy of the chamber has a measurement in it for DEI. And then these are the 4 pillars, and each one of those will have a metric added to them. And then we'll measure that dashboard just like we would anything else, and hold ourselves as well as the team accountable for those results.
For delivering on them. Oh, that's tremendous. Very hopeful. I think that's going to be good for our city. It's an interesting to point of telling the stories, like the story about there was just a little article about a lady. She literally every morning would drive her kids to sit in the McDonald's parking lot so that they would have access to Wi-Fi. And I thought, here, my kids are running around with, iPhones in their pockets and this and that. And if anything is remotely slow, it's all, hell breaks loose in the house. And, that this is just the practical reality of what they're dealing with. So we're getting a little close to the end. And Hattie, one of the questions, and this is kind of tied to, it says, why do you wake up in the morning? What's the most important thing to you today and in your life? And I remember we had a discussion around, like, how do you deal with all the noise? How do you stay optimistic? And then, what is it that you're going to say to your grandkids when they said, what did you do during 2020? So why don't we wrap up with kind of your answer to that?
Yeah, so first of all, what I do is keep some of the noise out. So the TV, all of the, I was talking to someone yesterday and they're so stressed by all the political things that are happening. And my advice is, turn your TV off, you do your part. And once you do your part as an individual, then take yourself away from it. I think we have over-indexed on the drama of politics these days. So just pulling ourselves away from it. The isolation is hard on our bodies. Listening to music, things you enjoy, exercise, whatever the things you enjoy personally, but to pull yourself away from that. And that's your day to day. And then the second thing, and Carrie, what Carrie's referring to is I have a 2-month-old baby, first baby grandbaby, and she's so cute. Everybody thinks that, right? But but as a conscious leader, and I would invite all of you to ask yourself this question. It is, during this time, what did I do? And I was thinking, when she's 15 and she's studying history, and we talk about the 2020 pandemic and all the things that have happened, what I want to be able to say is, as a conscious leader, here's what I did for my community, because we have these 3 platforms, and this is my walk away for each one of you. We have our individual platforms that this is what I do, and it could be in my church, it could be in any individual place where I have an impact. You have the company that you work with, or the organization, your nonprofit, you have that. And then we have these organizations that you and I both, Carrie, have talked about, like the Chamber, the Texas Women, all of us, we have those type of platforms just as conscious leaders. And so what I would ask is that you look at all 3 of your platforms. And the question that I want to answer for my granddaughter, and I hope all of you answer for yourselves as well as the future generations, is, this is what I did to be a conscious leader and to make a difference in 2020. And I think if we all be a force for good in that way, Carrie, we can look back and say we did our part. We can't control anybody else, but we can say we did our part here.
Did our part. Yes, I love that. Well, thank you, Hattie. We are bumped up right at 11:45. There were a couple of questions that we think we hopefully covered most of them off. Alexander, should we turn it back over to you?
I just want to end by saying thank you so much for that rich conversation. And what a note to end on, Hattie, pointing out that we have our individual platforms, our business platforms, and our community platforms that transcend individual businesses that we can all serve as conscious leaders for. That, I think, is such a powerful way to end. And so just want to say thank you to the 2 of you for this inspiring conversation. And to everyone listening, I hope you took something meaningful away from this as well. And Carrie and Hattie, once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.